On today's show, we'll be joined by weekly co-host Alykhan Bijani to discuss some interesting comments from Alperen Sengun in the aftermath of the Houston Rockets-Sacramento Kings game about how their offense changed without Kevin Porter Jr. on the floor. We'll break that down, as well as comments from around the league, players heaping praise on Alperen Sengun, talking about the organization needs to play more through him, build around him, all of this. We'll talk about that and why the Houston Rockets seemingly are the one organization that doesn't see this picture with Alperen Sengun. Plus, our goals, expectations, dreams, hopes for this Houston Rockets team for the second half of the season, as we are now at the midway point through this year. All of that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin. The show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. As always, appreciate you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day, whether it's on the way to work or at lunch or in the evenings at the gym. Sincerely, thank you for making LOR part of your day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, the X's and O's man himself, Alykhan Bijani, here to discuss some interesting comments both made by Alperen Sengun in the immediate aftermath of the Rockets-Kings game, as well as comments coming from players and coaches and just individuals, organizations around the league about the impact that Alperen Sengun is having on this game. Plus, we are officially at the midway point of the Houston Rockets season. 41 games completed. The Rockets are 10-31 on a worse pace than they were last season. So we'll have some goals and maybe expectations for the latter half of this Rocket season in segment 3. But Alykhan, let's start with kind of this. It was an interesting quote that came out after the Rockets-Kings game. Do you want me to read it? Do you want to be the one to read it? How do we want to do this quote?
I think you should be the one to read it. It's kind of profound.
Right. Okay. It is an interesting quote. So after the Rockets-Kings game, Alperen Sengun said, and kind of discussing the offense, especially in the second half that the Rockets were able to play, Alperen Sengun said, "We played a different offense because when Scoot is in the game, our offense is a little bit different," Sengun said via Jonathan Fagan of the Houston Chronicle. "And I knew after he went out, I'm going to touch the ball more because everything is changed." So that's the quote. And I find that quote, as Alykhan starts laughing, I find that quote very damning for a lot of reasons.
This is going to get taken out of context. Oh my God.
100% it is. Also because I made it a point in the previous episode recapping the Kings game that I said I didn't want the narrative to be that the Rockets only played this way because KPJ was out. I do still think KPJ is capable of playing.
They missed him in that fourth quarter, by the way.
They did. That fourth quarter collapse, that was tough. But Alykhan, what do you, besides the fact that people are going to run with this and the agenda is going to be horrendous with this quote, what do you make of this?
First of all, those of you who like to push out agendas versus actually watching the game, y'all annoying, man, straight up. Like, I'm sick and tired of agenda driving on social media when it comes to Rockets. Like, just enjoy the basketball. It's kind of hard to enjoy the basketball right now. Let me rephrase myself. But just, watch the games and come up with this stuff. Don't, the agenda stuff gets a little frustrating at times. Sorry, I kind of had to step off my podcast hat for a moment and say that because, man, when I'm scrolling on Twitter, I'm looking up stuff. Some people just
get off your soapbox. We get it. You don't like the agenda. What do you? Because just for me, when I see this quote from Sengun, One, you do have to understand that because there is a bit of a language barrier with Sengun, and he is doing so many of his interviews now in, without the use of a translator. They are his words. Yeah. I think sometimes he has quotes that can come off a little bit more just candidly or just matter of factly. When, again, if he was a native speaker, he might maybe tiptoe around an answer like this a little bit better, like some other players do. Like, I mean, obviously we know that Eric Gordon doesn't like to tiptoe around answers with his whole, There's no improvement. But this is something that athletes don't generally do, because this quote very much reads like him throwing KPJ under the bus, which I don't think was his intention.
No, I don't. I think what he's trying to say is that when KPJ's in the game, you have a guy who is considered to be the top ball handler on the team, and somebody who's able to create their own shot. And so whenever they're able to find a mismatch in transition or in the half court, and they have a shot to be able to kind of take advantage of that, KPJ is going to do so. And then Sengun's role is a little bit different, because his role is to be able to create a driving lane, whether that's being the dunker spot or being on the perimeter, or just being a screener who can shield the driving lane, kind of shield the lane for KPJ to drive. I think that's what he was talking about. That's different. But I also think there's merit, despite what I'm saying about the agenda stuff, there is merit in discussing how different the Rockets played when KPJ was not in the game, and the touches aspect of it. And why is that important, Jackson? Well, it's because Alperen Sengun was doing something that you and I have talked about throughout the whole season that we've been wanting him to do more. That's be a character. The Rockets have two variations of their offense. They don't really run actions. We know that. They run actions. They don't run plays. Right. So when they come up the court, they're trying to see what's going on in transition. Do they have a mismatch available? If not, then who has the ball at the top of the key? Usually 60 to 70% of the time, it's Alperen Sengun. They're kind of diving into a specific play. It could be Chicago action. It could be 21 series delay. Look these up. If I know we don't have enough time to get into that today, but we've talked about it before, and you can look these kind of sets up too. They kind of involve a big at the top of the key. And Sengun kind of gets into that. Then he runs a dribble handoff with Jalen, or he runs a dribble handoff with the shooter. So there are things that the Rockets do a lot more when Alperen Sengun is there, because he can be that connector piece between transition and into the half court offense. And we saw a lot of that in that second quarter and third quarter when Alpi was the one who was initiating, and he got a majority of his 10 assists in that second and third quarter. Right, Jackson? I mean, you went back and you compiled all of them together. Just curious to you, I'll get into what my differences were. What's the difference when he has the ball in his hands when KPJ's on the court versus not on the court?
Alykhan, to me, it's almost, I think it's a two-part thing for me. First, I think that the kind of philosophy of this Rockets team, the direction of the team, right, is so heavily predicated on a play style that is hyper-focused on Kevin and Jalen taking a majority of the shots, handling the basketball the majority of the time, initiating the offense a majority of the time, all of that. So when both of those guys are out there on the floor, obviously a majority of the offense, I throw an arbitrary number out, 70, 80%, whatever, a lot of it's going to flow through those two guys. And unfortunately, at times, those two guys, and this kind of builds into my second point, those two guys, as well as Eric Gordon, they have a tendency to get a little sticky with the basketball, right? They have a tendency the ball gets to them, and then they think that, okay, like, I need to attack, right? I need to do something with the ball. And a lot of times that also results in them generating themselves a shot. Now, sometimes when the offense looks really good, those guys will drive and attack and then make the right read and then get the defense in rotation, and then the ball is swinging and things look fantastic. But there are lots of times where any one of those three guys are not necessarily the connector type offensive pieces that we've talked about a lot this season, right? We've talked about Alperen Sengun as a connector. We've talked about KJ Martin as a connector. Jae'Sean Tate is a connector. Usman Garuba is a connector. There are pieces that are complementary fit pieces on the court of your five guys that understand that they need to stay in their role. They provide, very specific skill set, and they move the basketball, right? They're ball moving type players. And so not only did not having Kevin out there, who is one of the two primary focal points of the Rockets offense, clearly it opened up a little bit more for everybody else to take part, and it opened up the doorway for more from Alperen Sengun. But not having all three of those guys on the court at the same time, and only having two of them in Jalen and Eric, and having another connective piece offensively in KJ Martin, who gives you another layer offensively, gives you a little bit more, versatility on offense, a different play style, allows you to do different things.
Somebody who can just play off ball. Doesn't need the ball in his hands. Yes.
Exactly. I think that unlocked some of what we saw that was really special there in the third quarter, especially because that's where Alperen Sengun had his six of his 10 assists.
I do want to make one more point that we can discuss it further in the next segment. The thing with Alperen Sengun is that when he touches the ball first, and this has happened every possession because he's a guy who wants to score as well. But when he touches the ball early in the possession, the team is more likely to move the ball side to side or actually commit at least, a sequence of that possession to move it from the right side to the left or the left to the right. That kind of exchange occurs when Alpi's at the top of the key. But when KPJ or Jalen bring the ball up and initiate it, it happens, right? But not as frequently as when Sengun does it. And that's because those two, as ball handlers, are perimeter players who are supposed to be getting mismatches and attacking. Sengun is looking to initiate very differently, right? He's making reads for his teammates to set them up. Now, what happens sometimes is if KPJ and Jalen can't get going, especially early in the shot clock, and if Alpi has position, he'll get like about 10 seconds to be able to make a play. But 10 seconds versus 17 seconds for a big is very different. Because in the 17 seconds and the ball at the top of the key, Alperen Sengun can actually function as a hub. He can read the left and the right. He can see what kind of pin down action is being run. If the Rockets are doing a dribble handoff, they can kind of initiate two different things, right? That may take 3, 4, 5 seconds off the clock. Then he gets to 10 seconds and he can pitch it to somebody else or get into a dribble handoff or attack as a screener or whatever the case may be. But when you only have 10 seconds, 9 seconds, and I'm being generous here, towards the end of the shot clock, it's a little bit more different for Alpi. He's still going to look to pass initially, but after that first look to pass, he's going to try to back down and score. It's a different mentality, right? So it's like you have to be able to find a balance. This comes with inexperience for all of these players, for Alpi, for Kevin Porter Jr. still as a point guard maturing there, and Jalen Green as maturing as a ball handler. For all three of them, they have to be able to find the experience. They have to not just get the experience, but they have to learn from the experience to understand how a shot clock works for them and how they can make sure that three of them, when they play together, are successful. When Jalen and Sengun are together, it works really well. When KPJ and recently over these last few weeks with Sengun play together, plays really well. But what can we do to make sure that three of them together can play a functional offense, which allows them to establish a set defense and help them kind of on the defensive end as well?
Coming up, we'll continue the conversation focusing on that kind of goal of balance in this Houston Rockets offense. Plus, what are other NBA players around the association seeing Alperen Sengun do on the floor that is causing them to just rave about his capabilities and what he could one day be in this league? And why aren't the Houston Rockets seeing that as well? Plus, our goals and hopes and dreams and aspirations for the second half of this Houston Rockets season.
Inshallah.
But first, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's that simple. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Alykhan, in light of what we were kind of discussing there in that first segment, I do, just to reiterate again, because this was one of my takeaways from in the immediate aftermath of the Kings game. And I feel like, again, people, agenda-driven individuals are going to run with that Sengun quote. I am not out on the idea of Kevin and also Jalen, mainly because I feel like Jalen has had prior experience playing more of an off-ball role. We saw it in the G League. We kind of saw it during the first half or so season of his rookie year where he played quite a bit more off-ball, whereas now that's developed into quite a bit more of an on-ball role to where over these last 15 or 20 games, it feels like he is more on-ball than KPJ is at times, with KPJ now sliding into a bit more of an off-ball role. I do think that there is a world where the Rockets can utilize Jalen and Kevin and can lean further into this identity with Sengun as an offensive connector, as an initiator, as a primary focal point, if you will, as the offensive hub. And the only holdup there is whether or not the coaching staff, the organization, upper management, whatever, has a belief in Sengun to do this. I've made this argument that the only reason we're not seeing it to this point is, and I made this argument earlier in, before the season even started, or at least in the early days of the season, the only reason we're not seeing it yet, because it's clear as day what Sengun can be. I think there is doubt either with the coaching staff or the powers that be higher up than that in Sengun's long-term ability to be an impact player or to be an integral piece of a playoff team, a championship contender, what have you, further down the line. And my argument was always the Rockets probably don't see him as part of a team that can do that because of defensive issues or because of a limited ceiling, whatever the reason may be, which is why they're not entertaining the idea of playing that style right now, because they'd rather play a style that they think has the chance at long-term future success.
And I don't disagree with that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you need players to be ball handlers. And I think a good example of that is the Boston Celtics. Not saying I want the Rockets to be like the Celtics, but just in terms of a formula that's been successful recently.
Ironically, we should want the Rockets to be more like the Kings, because that's exactly...
Yeah. But the purpose I'm saying, I think what the Rockets may be envisioning from a front office perspective is you don't just have players who can play and defend and shoot. The next level, and Stephen Silas actually talked about this. I have to give him credit. Whenever he first got hired, he said he wants players on the floor who can all handle the basketball. And that's how the Celtics play. They usually have all five of their players on the court are able to at least execute some sort of dribble action, whether that's attacking a closeout effectively, not turning the ball over, or even just executing a pick and roll.
Wait, quick, remind me here. Can Bruno Fernando handle the basketball?
No, he cannot.
Okay, just double checking.
Yes, which then gets to the next point. Well, you know what, Jackson? I will push back on you. I can say that could be like Robert Williams in Boston, okay? Not the same player and not the same thing. I'm just trying to be funny with you.
Lob threat.
But the point I'm trying to make is that the Rockets are trying to run an offense that is very much, we can agree, perimeter and guard oriented. I think you can still be perimeter and guard oriented and play five out the way the Rockets currently do, but add some more versatility to it. Allow a guy like Sengun, who's clear strength right now as a basketball player offensively, is to be a hub, right? And if you're trying to promote success, you need to have at least some success occur so players feel like that this is occurring. I mean, there was a quote from Jalen. I don't know. I think it may have been Jonathan who had it out there. It was a recent piece where Jalen was basically talking about he's tired of losing, and that, it affects them. And I think just seeing some sort of success and allowing you to kind of get into a rhythm with that success can help you, take that next step. And let me tell you something about Jalen that I think is going to help solve his problems going to next year. From last year to this year, he improved, obviously, his body weight, more upper body mass. He's able to, draw fouls at a higher rate. He's getting to the free throw line. He's not scared to attack the rim. He's not finishing as well, but he's not scared to attack the rim. I think the next step for Jalen is not just making reads, because they work with him every single day on making reads out of pick and roll to make him a good pick and roll ball handler, but it's making the pass. And not because he's willingly not making the pass, but because I don't think he's there yet at making those passes. A cross-court pass. If you're in the lane and you see a third guy, that weak side guy coming over to help, and the weak side shooter is going to be open, can Jalen make that pass from underneath the basket to a shooter who's wide open? Can Jalen, whenever he's attacking on the left side of the court, make a pass to the right corner cross court? Those are the things that I want to see Jalen get improve upon, because if that's the case, then the way the Rockets are playing right now would be a lot more different. And also, it's a make or miss league. And let's be honest, the Rockets are missing a good amount of threes. I am not defending the way they're playing offense. Absolutely not. And the way they're playing offense, getting rebounds, all those different things inside the paint, that leads to those leaky transition opportunities for the opposing team, which is why the Rockets are the worst in the league in transition defense. However, that being said, I think if shots go in more and you're creating more high percentage shots, that all comes from not just making the read, but physically being able to do so effectively and accurately to a shooter to be able to knock down. And I think if he can get to that level, then Sengun and him can operate well together, because then you're not just relying on you're not, as Rockets fans, relying on Sengun as a hub to create your entire offense, which I don't think people are saying to do that now. But I think right now, if you were to poll Rockets fans, most of them have only confidence in Sengun to be a hub and to create offense, not anybody else on the team.
Look, I think an ideal scenario here would be like, I don't know, and again, I'm throwing out arbitrary numbers, but do something where you split the load a bit more evenly, right? Like 40, 30, 30 or something, or 50, 25, 25 between Sengun, Jalen, and Kevin. Nobody's saying that Jalen and Kevin can't handle the basketball or can't initiate the offense. It's just, we have seen one style for a year and a half now, and very little variation on that style. Steven Silas spoke at length previously before the season, about adding some, the post-up packages to their offense and everything for Sengun. We don't see any of that, because when Sengun gets a post-up, there's nothing happening off ball. Nobody's setting screens. Nobody's running any actions. There are no complicated sets where Sengun gets the ball at the elbow or the free throw line extended and guys are running, setting, off ball at the stuff that we saw the Kings doing, right? We saw the way that they used Sabonis and the way players moved and used their movement.
Look at that
off
play.
Of him.
Look at the play to end the half for the Kings. It was like 7 seconds left, 4 seconds left. Sabonis gets the ball at the right elbow, right free throw line extended, gets a screen from De'Aaron Fox, and drives inside and draws a foul. That's a play for your main hub in the last few seconds of a half. And what do the Rockets do?
With a guard setting the screen is the crazy part, right?
What the Rockets usually do is just run Viper.
For you, not the wiper, to use one of my favorite, I think, NBA terminology, right? 1-5 inverted pick and roll. Like, there we go. Like, that's more or less kind of what it was. I'm on handoff screen. It was cool. It was
the whole
awesome
Jeff Green, James Harden thing that we
from the bubble. It was a ton of fun. Look, I know we promised some of these comments from other players around the league, because I want to hammer home one more point about Alperen Sengun before we get to our final segment. I mean, we can go back to, so obviously Nikola Jokic had, lots of praise for Alperen Sengun, saying that he is really talented. And then he goes on to say, maybe this is going to sound weird, but I think they need to play a little bit more through him. This guy has the talent. He can pass the ball. He can post up, and he has the touch around the rim. You can see some different moves that he's made. So you have those comments from Jokic. And then you have comments from another two-time MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo from last season, where he says he's a good player. He takes his time. Nothing can speed him up. He might be slow in the post, but he's effective. He's playing well. He's playing a lot of minutes off the bench and gives energy to his teammates. He rebounds the ball well. He's being aggressive and sets good screens. I think the sky's the limit for him. Then you have Anthony Edwards, who comes out and echoes the same sentiments that the Rockets should build around Alperen Sengun, that they should, focus on him. And the key word here being, Anthony Edwards talked about the fact that they had to game plan for him. The Minnesota Timberwolves made adjustments in the second half to stop Alperen Sengun, because he was unstoppable in the first half against a Minnesota team featuring Rudy Gobert in the middle. And Alperen Sengun was still having his way with the T-Wolves in that game. And then most recently, the latest player to compliment Alperen Sengun, Nicholas Batum of the LA Clippers, who the Houston Rockets are getting ready to play this Sunday. Batum was talking about the current slate of games for the Clippers and the teams that they're facing. And he basically says, we're going to play the two best big men in the game, talking about Jokic and Embiid. And then he follows up by saying, and then we're going to play Baby Joker. And he says, that's what I call him, talking about Alperen Sengun. We're playing Baby Joker. And that again, is just you get all this praise from all these players around the league, and it seems like the only organization that can't see like this that we've been begging for is the Rockets, unfortunately. And here's my argument to be made, and I'll get off because right now I'm on my soapbox. I'm preaching right now.
Do it.
Even if the Rockets don't believe in Sengun's long-term success as like a focal point or piece of a championship contender, who cares? Do it right now. Gas his numbers up. Make him look better. Let him average 22 and 12 every single game because he could probably do it easily with a handful of assists to go along with it. Make him the hub and then trade him, right? Pump up his trade value and then trade him for a piece that you do believe in. I don't want to see that happen because I do. I am buying Alykhan. I am buying all the Sengun stock at this point because I think he's got talent. I think he can be a piece that you should build around, right? I think he can be a piece that can be a part of a contender one day. And you're seeing these flashes. You're seeing these flashes, these moments of absurd talent in spite of an organization that does not prioritize him.
And let me tell you something real quick defensively, because that's the whole argument to you, Jackson's going to be, well, Jackson, he can't defend. You know, honestly, yes, he can be a center for a contending team. And let me tell you how. When you have perimeter players who can actually keep a man in front, and then you have weak side defenders who don't get lost when a pass is made cross court. And then you don't have two guys rushing to close out on the corner. This team is inexperienced. Sengun, yes, I'll be very honest with you, has not been the best, or he's not been good even. I would say as a drop big. But he's been serviceable. He's been average. He has moments where he makes good plays. And, excuse me, I think when it comes down to it, you can build a team around Alpi where you have a guy like Jabari already who can come off the weak side and also kind of cover some high ground for you on the help side as well. Then you have a guy like Tari Eason who can be a guy at the nail who uses his length to dig at the ball, get some steals, gamble a little bit. You have Jalen who shows moments, but he has to get better at fighting around screens. You have KPJ who shows moments. He has to get better at fighting around screens and staying engaged in terms of the Rocket shell defense. You have that, but you have to be more consistent. And I think right now, to be very honest with you, the inexperience is lending itself to a very porous defense. And we'll talk about the next segment, but one of my big goals is, I'm buying all the stock in Sengun along with you. But it's going to be very hard for us to get a true understanding, honestly, of how well Sengun can be a hub and how he can play well if he's getting into foul trouble because the defense is breaking down and he has to be the last line of defense. He's been much better, and especially in that Kings game. I tweeted about it too. That second quarter, he played the entire second quarter with 2 fouls, vertically contested most shots. He gave up a few because he couldn't foul and be aggressive with it, but he did not commit a third foul in that second quarter. And that to me was a sign of growth and a sign that you can trust him to be a center for you for a contending team eventually one day as he grows, because he's showing a willingness to play smarter, but you also have to have teammates around him who are engaged and not making those mistakes defensively.
Coming up are goals, expectations, dreams, aspirations, all of the above for the second half of this Houston Rockets season. We're going to get there in just a moment, but first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, college bowl season, basketball, you name it, they've got you covered over at BetOnline. It's always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your sports betting info. Right now, you can take a look at who the odds-on favorites are to win the NBA title this season. The Boston Celtics leading the way at plus 400, the Milwaukee Bucks at plus 650, Brooklyn Nets in third at plus 750, and rounding out the top 5, you have the Golden State Warriors still up at the top of the pecking order at plus 800, and the Denver Nuggets creeping up at plus 900. So for all those odds and more, be sure to visit betonline.net to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, looking at the remaining second half of this season, Alykhan, Rockets have 41 more games. And I feel like we kind of already, like, I feel like this can just be like a universal, like both you and I feel the same way about this as a goal for this next half of the season. So I feel pretty safe in just, I'll tee us off and start with goal number 1 for the Rockets for the second half of this season. Play more through Sengun. Because that's, I mean, we sound like a broken record because we've been echoing this same sentiment all season long, but we see what it can do, right? The Kings game was the blueprint for it. We saw the success that they had against the Chicago Bulls when they went more through Sengun. When he gets the touches, when he gets the minutes, when he gets the chance, the production is there, and the team looks better for it. And again, at this point, you know, to my point from last segment, even if they don't believe in the long-term success of it, I think there are too many benefits in the immediate here and now, in the micro. And even in the macro sense of things, you could still trade Sengun, right? Gas his numbers up, trade him later on for something else, trade him for the next disgruntled superstar that wants out of a bad situation. But you can't do that if you're forcing him to play a role that is not to his skill set, right? If you're trying to make him a rim runner, he's not going to look as good as if you make him an offensive hub. And then when you do want to move on from him, you're not going to get as much return because you haven't sat there and, you know, made him look the best that he could be. So that's goal number 1 for me, is play more through Sengun, because hopefully, maybe, and here's the hope, fingers crossed, they do play more through Sengun, and then they realize, oh, hey, this is a sustainable way to win games, or this is a sustainable method of playing the game, and we could put pieces around him to make this a viable playoff contender, whatever, down the line.
I want to just add on to your point, and this is about Jabari Smith. When Alperen Sengun was handling the ball exclusively in the second and third quarter, and Jabari Smith Jr. was playing with him, I saw Jabari Smith Jr. a lot more engaged. And what I mean by that is Jabari's not just standing in the corner. He's not just standing on the wing and kind of looking to get a shot and knock it down. He was moving for his teammates. There was one play in transition where Jabari Smith and Garrison Matthews were on one side. And then Jabari cleared that side by cutting towards the middle of the lane, and then Garrison Matthews lifted. Lift means moving from one part to the other. He lifted from the corner to the wing. So Jabari, because he cleared out the defender, right? Garrison stepped up, knocked down a 3. First thing Garrison Matthews does is point at Jabari and say, that was all you. You created that. And for the rest of the game, Jabari was engaged offensively. He wasn't getting the shots. He wasn't getting, he wasn't hitting his shots either. But what he was doing was that he was moving. He was helping the other teammates be able to get some shots, get some shot attempts in. And I think that goes a lot to do with Sengun being the hub, because then Jabari is connected to Sengun. If Sengun has the ball at the top of the key, you need to have at least one other big guy or somebody cutting and crashing the lane. Jae'Sean did that. KJ Martin did that. But then you saw a lot of glimpses, frankly, from Jabari Smith doing that. And if Jabari Smith is engaged, that to me is another positive why you want to have Alperen Sengun be that hub for you, especially however long KPJ is out, because you're giving a guy a chance to be able to get his other teammates involved. And let me just say one more thing on Alperen about consistency. Over the past 3 games, Sengun is averaging 16 points per game and 10 rebounds per game. So he's almost to that 22 and 10. He's at 16 and 10, right? Also, he's recorded 5+ assists in 6 of his past 10 games played. He only did that twice in the first 27 games. So we're seeing more consistency from there as well. And then defensively, he's playing better. He still has the games here and there where he's getting in foul trouble. But that Kings game, that first Kings game to me was a sign that, you know what? This guy against relentless rim attacks from De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, he's not getting into too much foul trouble. And if he does, he's able to play without fouling and still be consistent and engaged on the offensive end. And that to me is a very good sign for him.
You know what?
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish.
I'm butting in with one more. I was gonna throw it to you and just say, take it away, Alykhan. Give me one of your goals, but I gotta add one here about the fouling from Sengun. Goal for the second half of the season. The coaching staff, Silas and the coaching staff, need to let him play with fouls, because pulling him from the game immediately when you get a second foul in the first quarter, or a third foul in the second quarter, or a fourth foul in the third, whatever, right? Sengun has shown, like you talked about the 2 fouls against the Kings, right? And then also you go back to the double overtime win against the Sixers, playing against Joel Embiid, playing against Embiid with 5 fouls. Sengun can and does a good job. There are times when he does pick up ticky-tack fouls, right? And so what? Maybe he'll foul out of a couple games here and there, but he needs to learn how to play with fouls to then also subsequently learn how to not get those fouls, right? Because the mentality does change. When you're playing with fouls, you are aware of those fouls, and you will start to understand. And I don't mean like he's going to start playing Ole defense and let guys go by him. He needs to learn how to play physically, how to still play good defense with the fouls, but you can't do that if you
more reps just staying vertical. He can do it. He can stay vertical.
Yes.
Just you got to give him more opportunities. Inshallah, my guy. Inshallah, Jackson.
Oh, there we go. Hang on. I got the
Inshallah.
There we go. There we go. The newest
for our listeners, that basically just means God willing or hopefully. So hopefully it happens, man. Hopefully we see my guy Sengun doing that. I got one quick goal for you.
Okay.
All right. Inshallah. You got it? Inshallah. All right. We got the Rockets playing more consistent defense in terms of their help side defense. And how do you quantify that, or how do you measure that? For me, it's going to come down to corner threes. The Rockets are going to give up corner threes because they're helping off, but how many corner threes are going to give up? Is it going to go down by a few? Because if it goes down by a few or the percentage decreases, that means they're closing out much better, or they're closing out more aggressively, allowing them to drive in, funneling them towards the help defense. I want to see the corner 3-point shooting go down. And then I also have one other goal, and this goal is for Jalen Green. I need Jalen to slow down. And I need Jalen to slow down and get and take advantage of what the defense is giving him. I know what he wants to do, and I know he can do it. I know he can get to the lane and score. But the defense is giving you a mid-range shot. Take it. Open up, diversify what the defense is giving you by taking initially what they're giving you, because you can knock down that shot. Get into rhythm. And then once that happens, start making those passes. He's going to get a lot of turnovers doing this initially until he gets to that point, but make those cross-court passes. Because if he can do that, to me, Jalen takes that next step. Because right now, I don't care what anybody says, he's still a really good shot at being a great player in this league, right? I mean, he's just going through a slump. This is just a small slump. He's going to learn from it. He works every day. He's not one of those guys who's not trying to learn from it. He's in the gym sometimes twice a day trying to figure this out. But as of right now, he has to be able to just slow down, look what the defense is doing, and take advantage of it. And the perfect example of that was after that first quarter when he had all those shot attempts against Sacramento. He came back down and he was making passes to his teammates. And his teammates didn't knock those shots down, but I was very happy with the process that Jalen Green was going through in terms of being a decision maker and finding passes and reads to his teammates. He showed a big step towards growth in that game against Sacramento, and I hope that continues when they play Sacramento again.
I've got one more quick one on Jalen, and I was smiling when you started talking about Jalen, because my quick one here for Jalen is actually the inverse of yours. So maybe we should quantify this. I think Jalen needs to slow down in the half court. I think he needs to speed up in transition. I feel like there's both Kevin and Jalen have a tendency to play slow for whatever reason. They bring the ball up slow. They play very, very slow. I need both. So it's a key for both of them. Kevin and Jalen, I need them to play faster, to play with pace, to really push the ball. You've seen since Jae'Sean Tate has come back, he has kind of helped ignite some of these breaks. You see it with Sengun when he gets the rebound and is looking for those kick ahead passes to those, to get those transition opportunities. I need them to push pace. So I need them to speed up, especially when they get a stop. You get a stop, speed up, get out in transition. So that's one more goal. And then the last one that I've got here very, very quickly on Jabari Smith Jr., just find ways to keep him involved, right? And this kind of piggybacking off what you said earlier about Jabari playing off of Sengun, how he looks more involved, how he looks more motivated, what have you. Jabari is your number 3 overall pick, right? You've got to find a way, even when his shot's not falling. Yes, you have to empower your players somehow. And even if the shots don't fall, run a couple actions for him, right? Keep him involved. Let him touch the ball, because then you'll get the Jabari that is motivated and playing great defense. Then you'll get the Jabari who's hustling and diving on the floor and being vocal and leading and doing all the little things that are hard to quantify in the box score, but that we know that he's capable of. And where that happened in this Kings game, Jabari was he started looking more locked in that second half, playing off of Sengun, absolutely. But then he had the poster dunk on Keegan Murray. And from that moment, Jabari was so locked in after that play because he was hyped, right? He was into it. He was no longer an afterthought offensively. He finally saw not only a shot went in, but it was an emphatic slam over another peer, a rookie on rookie violence. It was great. So find ways to keep Jabari Smith Jr. involved for sure.
One lineup I want to see, actually. Jae'Sean Tate as ball handler, Jalen Green, KJ Martin, Jabari Smith, and Alperen Sengun. I would love to see that in action. I think that action can do a lot of really good things for this team.
Is that your last little wish list?
I have one more. I have one more wish list.
Okay.
Inshallah, we actually see the Rockets run more some sort of layered pick and roll attack. Yeah, you can run pick and roll all you want. Your KPJ and Jalen Green are among the league leaders in pick and roll in terms of attempts, but layer it up. Start letting them learn how to make decisions out of, a Spain pick and roll, or a layer where you not just do a Spain pick and roll or a 3-man pick and roll, but you have players from the weak side, those shooters moving around too. Layer the offense a little bit more. You can't just have them read and react. Allow them to read and react off of those layers. To me, that's a really big thing I'm looking forward to seeing in the second half.
With that, those are our goals, hopes, expectations, all of it for the second half of the season. Let us know yours. Let us know what you want to see out of the Houston Rockets in the second half of the season. Let us know in the YouTube comments. Alykhan, you know the drill. Let everybody know where they can track you down at.
Follow me on Twitter, Rockets_insider, and make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok as well. Gonna have some film studies there. Thank you.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app. Free and available on all podcast platforms. They're also available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Again, let us know your thoughts on your goals, what you want to see out of the Houston Rockets in the second half of this season. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.